class, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at circles. So the first thing I want to do is just review the different parts of a circle. We're going to be using these different vocabulary words. So make sure that you look over the diagram. Feel free to press pause on the video and make sure you understand the different parts. Couple things I want to point out real quickly. Is a diameter, this purple line here. Notice how it goes all the way across the circle, but it passes through the center. Sometimes people get confused with a chord. A chord goes from one side of the circle to another, but it does not necessarily go through the center. So the diameter has to pass through the center. And notice that the radius goes from the side to the middle. So the radius is exactly half the size of the diameter, which is going to be important for what we're looking at next. As we learn more about circles and how to do different operations with them, we're going to need to know the difference between a radius and a diameter. So again, it's really, really important that we understand that the diameter is twice the length of the radius. That basically means if we put two radiuses together, we get the diameter. That also means that if we know the radius, we can figure out the diameter. If we know the diameter, we can figure out the radius. So if we're looking at this image here, we can see we've been given all the way across the circle. So that would be the diameter. The diameter is what has been given to us. Now the radius would only be half that distance. So the radius would just be going halfway across, stopping in the middle. So we can find the radius using our formula, diameter equals 2 times r. So in this case, we know that our diameter is 10, and we can solve for our radius by simply dividing by 2. So in this particular circle, our radius would be 5 because that is half the length of our diameter, which is 10. Now, if we look at the second image of our circle, this time we've only been given that halfway distance. So we've been given the radius. Our radius is 12. Our diameter would need to go all the way across. So that would be twice the distance. So because we know our radius, we can just multiply our 12 times 2 to get our diameter of 24. The next thing we're going to talk about is the distance around the circle. So if you think about our circle, if I were to take scissors and I were to just snip right here along that dot, and I were to think of it as a piece of string that I was unraveling, the string could then be measured linearly. That just means in a straight line. And so that's called the circumference, the distance around the circle. And we have a formula for finding circumference. Our formula for circumference is the circumference is equal to 2 pi r, or we can also say that as circumference is equal to pi times diameter. That's really the formula just written two different ways, because remember 2 times the radius, that's the same thing as the diameter. So what we're going to practice doing is we're going to practice looking at some circles and finding their circumference. So if we're given a circle, and I'm going to draw myself a picture here so that we can visually see what's happening. So if we're given a circle and our circle has a radius of 4, that means that halfway across is 4. We can use our formula, circumference equals 2 pi r, to find the circumference. So we would just plug in 4 for the radius, and we would multiply that out. Now notice this number right here, 8 pi. We call that in terms of pi. That just means that we didn't multiply by pi. We kind of treated pi like a variable because pi is an irrational number. Generally speaking, we use 3.14 to estimate the value of pi. but pi actually goes on forever. So if we were to do the multiplication here, and we were to actually multiply 8 times 3.14, we would end up with 25 point, I think it's 12. This is a rounded value here. Now in our second example, we're going to see that instead of being given the radius, this time we were given the diameter. So this would be a circle. I'll draw myself a little picture where the diameter going all the way across is 3.3. So I could use the other form of the formula, circumference equals pi times diameter. And I would just be multiplying pi times 3.3 to get my circumference. So go ahead and we're going to practice finding circumference using that formula. I've assigned some practice problems in the book. You can check those out on my website, and feel free to pause the video or to go back and review it again. See you guys soon.